Narcissists are exceptionally skilled at the art of choosing what they want to believe. They're able to convince themselves of the reality that they want to be true. And it's important for us to understand what it is they want to believe, because whatever it is they want to believe is what they will believe, despite anything we ever try to get across to them. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. In this video, I'm going to go over a list of things that narcissists typically want to believe in. These are things that they're emotionally invested in and things that they are not going to let go of. And then I'm also going to go over some things that they don't want to believe. And these things are just as powerful to them as the things they do want to believe. These are things that no matter what happens, no matter how well you explain things, no matter how much logic you try to inject into any conversation, these are things a narcissist will cling to and will never let go of. They would almost rather die than face rational, logical reality, especially when confronted with the beliefs that they have the most emotional investment in. They first have a collection of things they want to believe about how people are seeing them, how they're coming across. They want to believe that people are buying into their facade or their manufactured personality. Narcissists don't really have a true self. They are completely out of touch with their authentic identity. They're not really conscious of this, but they don't really know who they are. There really is no real person underneath it all, and everything they do is sort of an act. Each narcissist individually decides who they think the perfect person would be and also who they would be able to replicate. They create a sort of persona that they imagine will get them the validation that they need, that will be the right person to be, that will be the person they should be in order to be able to continue feeling good enough or to overcome the enormous amount of shame that they live with. And they live with such deep pathological shame that this fake personality or facade is something that needs to be absolutely amazing, flawless, perfect, outstanding, the most important person that's ever lived. So the persona that they're invested in is extremely important to them. If other people don't buy into it, if other people don't believe with them, make believe with them that this fake personality that they've created is real, then the whole thing kind of crumbles. It's like a house of cards being blown over. They need other people to believe in it with them in order to make it real, in order to convince themselves that it's real. They need everyone else to believe it's real. And so this is probably their number one need to believe in belief that they convince themselves is true. And really, for the most part, it actually is true. Most people don't really second guess a narcissist's personality because most of them do a pretty decent job at conjuring up this facade. I think there's a lot of people out there that get a sense that something's off when they meet a narcissist, that something's not quite right, or maybe they might feel like this person is a little bit fake or a little bit too much of this thing or the other. But in general, I think narcissists are pretty good at pulling off the personality that they've been practicing their whole lives. But they're invested in believing that everyone is buying into it. They really can't stand the thought of being exposed for the nothing that they are, the nothing that they feel like they are. Underneath this facade that they've created is a whole lot of nothing. And this whole lot of nothing is kind of to cover up the extreme shame they feel for the identity that they can't even look at, that they're not even in touch with. So if people were to catch on that their personality is conjured, it would kind of feel like the end of the world to them. They wouldn't know what to do with themselves. They would have no identity. In a way, their fake identity is a lot better than no identity at all. They're also very invested in the idea that nobody can see their flaws. Nobody's noticing the mistakes that they're making. And if anybody points anything out, the narcissist isn't even able to acknowledge these flaws or mistakes. So if other people are seeing them, they immediately start engaging in manipulation and lies and excuses and gaslighting. They would almost rather die than admit that they have any flaws. They really have to believe that, like everyone is buying into their personality, everyone is also buying into the idea that they're flawless. Narcissists also have to believe that they're in control of everything and everyone. If they aren't controlling the people around them and the environment around them in overbearing ways, they feel like they have no control over anything. They really can't control themselves. They have no ability to self-regulate. So if they can't control you and everyone else in the room, they feel like they have no control of anything. Now, at this point in the video, you might be wondering why I am pointing these out as things that they need to believe rather than things that they strive for. It's because these aren't quite the same thing. It's not really that narcissists are consciously trying to manipulate people and pull things over on people. I mean, they are, but it's more about how much they're trying to fool themselves. So this false identity, it's not really to fool other people, it's to fool themselves. And this belief that they control everything, it's not really about trying to get to a point where they can control everything and everyone. It's about the need to be in control of everyone and everything right now. They need to believe that this is the current state of events. They control everything and everyone. Nobody sees that they have any flaws. They don't have any flaws. That's why nobody can see those flaws. They are the personality that they have made up, and everyone else can see that. They also believe and need to believe that they are special. They are the exception to every rule. Rules are there for everyone else. The world exists for them. Therefore, the rules exist for them, but not for them to follow, but for others to follow to make their life easier. As I've said in other videos, it's like traffic laws are there so that the narcissist can drive safely through traffic however he or she pleases. The traffic laws are for everyone else to follow for the narcissist's benefit. And that's pretty much how they view everything. All laws, all rules, they are the exception to everything. Everything is okay when they do it. If they want to do it, then it's okay. If you want to do it, only if it doesn't affect them in a negative way. Now, there's a whole other set of beliefs that narcissists are invested in about you, about the people that they are in relationships with, and specifically people that they've gotten to the point of abusing. And this gets a little more complicated and will intuitively make a little more sense as beliefs rather than things that they're striving for. The first thing they need to believe about you is that everything is your fault. And I mean, they really need to believe this. It's not really that they're trying to convince you that everything is your fault. Like I said, it's that they're trying to convince themselves. They need to believe that everything is your fault. They couldn't possibly be the one that's caused all of these problems. It has to be somehow something that you've done wrong. They have to believe that you will carry the blame for the problems in the relationship. They have to believe that you should carry the blame. And that belief comes first and the rationalization comes next. So however it is they can spin it in their head, they will, no matter how off base or how ridiculous or how unfair it seems. For reasons that I've gone over quite a bit in other videos, they just cannot accept fault or accountability for anything, especially big problems. No matter how egregious their behavior, it somehow has to be your fault. And they have to believe that in order to get through the day. And when narcissists are in an abusive mode, when they're abusing you, when they're mistreating you, calling you names, criticizing you, blaming you for things, there are some things they need to believe when they're in that frame of mind. One thing they need to believe is that you have bad intentions, you're out to get them. They need to believe that, because why else would they be attacking you so viciously? You're the bad guy, remember? So they will come up with reasons to believe that you actually hate them, that you're out to get them, that you mean them harm, that you've been lying to them, that you're a traitor. And this is why they will suddenly start accusing you of things that don't make any sense, accusing you of intentions you don't have, of feelings you don't have, of motives you don't have, accusing you of not really loving them, of being disingenuous, of taking advantage of them, because they need to believe this. And when you come along and try to explain, no, I do care about you, or no, I didn't mean for you to feel that way, I wasn't trying to attack you. When you try to explain that you didn't mean them harm, that you don't mean them harm, they don't want to believe that. They want to believe that you're the bad guy. They want to believe that you're out to get them, that you hate them, that you've been lying to them all this time. They want to believe that. They don't feel some kind of relief like, oh, good, he or she really does love me. Oh, good, they weren't lying to me. Oh, good, it was all in my head all along, everything's fine. They don't feel relief with that kind of an idea. They feel panicked because they're emotionally invested in the idea that you're actually out to get them. This is the only way to justify their behavior. If they feel compelled to hurt you and abuse you, they have to have a reason. And you having horrible intentions and being out to get them and being a traitorous liar is a perfect reason for them to be abusive towards you. It lets them off the hook. And the last thing that they need is for you to come along and explain to them why they were wrong, because they need to believe that you are out to get them. They also need to believe that you're responsible for their negative emotions. So this kind of goes hand in hand with you being out to get them, but that would just be one possible reason for why they feel so terrible. So they may feel angry or self-conscious or just have any kind of negative emotion, which at its core is just a reflection of their own self-hatred and self-loathing and their own emptiness, but they've somehow got to blame this on you. They have to believe that you're responsible for their emotions. And so if they feel bad, it's because you failed them. They have to believe this because the only alternative is that they are actually responsible for their own emotions. And they don't know what to do with that. They don't know how to solve their own emotional problems, and they certainly don't want to try. Another thing that narcissists like to believe is that everything will magically work out somehow. They have kind of a magical worldview, and it goes hand in hand with their inability to take accountability for anything. If they're responsible for things, if they're accountable, if their actions have consequences, then naturally they would also have responsibilities. They would have certain things that if I don't do X, Y, and Z, then A, B, and C is going to happen. Their brain just really doesn't work that way because accountability is such a foreign concept to them. Therefore, they can be incredibly irresponsible. And sometimes this can come in the form of very clear black and white things like not paying their bills, like quitting a job before they have a new one, or like being extremely disrespectful to the person that's paying their rent, or maybe just blowing off a speeding ticket and ignoring it until they have a warrant out for them or something like that. But this same problem can also come in a not so obvious form. It could be things like slowly destroying relationships, but thinking somehow this person's always going to come back and give them a second chance. It could be treating themselves certain ways, maybe not taking care of themselves and somehow having the magical beliefs that everything's going to work out, that they're never actually going to get sick, that their bad habits are never really going to catch up to them. Of course, a lot of us can share in that delusion. But however they express this, they have a lack of accountability, and they really have to believe that everything is going to stay the way it is right now because they don't really want anything to change. And it's very similar to the joke about the little 4 or 5-year-old hiding in the closet with his eyes closed saying, "You can't see me." That's kind of how narcissists look at the world and look at problems. If they just ignore them, they'll go away. If they just refuse to acknowledge certain things, those things just will magically not happen. And of course, a big one I've done a whole video on, is narcissists need to believe that they are always the victim. And I would say this is one of the most universal traits of any pathological narcissist. Somehow they are the one that's always gotten the short end of the stick. They've always gotten the raw deal. They're always the one that's being picked on. Nobody's ever been fair with them. Every failure in their life, every bad thing that's ever happened is always somebody else's fault, and they're always the victim. They need to believe this, because if they have to face the idea that they aren't this perpetual victim, then they would have to take accountability for all of those things they did that caused all of those problems. Before I get into a list of things that narcissists don't want to believe, the last thing that they do want to believe is anything that they already believed. So if you've ever tried to change a narcissist's mind about anything, you probably know what I'm talking about. I knew a narcissist who was a grown middle-aged man, reasonably intelligent, it seemed, that strongly believed that you could catch a cold by being cold. And I mean, I guess I can understand why somebody would believe that you can catch a cold by being cold, but I remember trying to explain that a cold is a virus, and you catch a cold if you're exposed to the virus. You don't catch a cold because you got cold. And I thought it was so strange how he just didn't believe me. He just chose to believe in what he already believed. And no amount of logic, science, data, evidence, Google searches would have any impact whatsoever on this belief that was already established. Narcissists can't allow you to teach them anything. Narcissists refuse to learn from anything that even slightly offends their ego. And you telling them that they are wrong about something, no matter how nicely you do it, is just never going to be accepted. If a narcissist already believes something, that's part of their magical worldview, and nobody is going to take that belief away from them. Now, what do narcissists not want to believe? In the context of an abusive relationship, and especially one that has fallen apart, narcissists do not want to believe that their behavior had anything to do with the demise of that relationship. This is important to understand, because when abusive relationships end, we can get sucked back in by the hoover of the narcissist as the narcissist tries to convince us that they've changed. And we can get very caught up in the idea of somehow helping them to change. But if we really understood how deeply the narcissist believes that they truly did nothing wrong, then we would understand that they don't see anything to change. No matter how obvious it might seem to you, the narcissist cannot allow themselves to believe that their behavior had anything to do with the reason the relationship failed. And if their behavior had nothing to do with it, then there's nothing for them to change. It's all your fault, or the universe's fault, or somebody else's fault, but it can't be their fault. They cannot accept that. And so there's nothing for them to change. So when you're sitting there trying to help them change what? They didn't do anything wrong. They also do not want to believe that their emotional problems are their own. I would say this is probably the most terrifying prospect in the world to them. So terrifying that the vast majority of them aren't even aware of the idea that they actually have deeply ingrained emotional problems that are theirs, that are coming from within them. When their emotional problems act up, they find ways to blame anything and everyone else. They cannot accept the idea that they have personal emotional problems that have nothing to do with anyone around them. They also don't want to believe that in abusive relationships in which they've been abusive, that the victim didn't deserve the abuse. I guess I could have put this on the things they need to believe, but we can do this backwards. They need to believe that you deserve the abuse when they've abused you. They need to twist that up in their head somehow, that their behavior is justified and warranted. And this goes back to the belief that they need to have that you're the bad guy, that you're out to get them, that you have bad intentions. But they cannot accept the idea that somebody that they have mistreated didn't deserve it. They also refuse to believe that they are responsible for their own life. And this goes back to the belief that they are always the victim. Well, they can't believe that they have responsibility for their own choices, that the consequences they suffer are due to their own actions. They can't take responsibility for anything that happens to them, unless it's a good thing. You know, if they accomplish something amazing, then of course that's all because of them. But anything that goes wrong is somebody else's fault. They can't take responsibility. They can't take responsibility for things that they need to change or need to work on. They cannot recognize those things. And this is kind of sad because it actually leaves them pretty powerless. It actually leaves them pretty helpless. When you can't take accountability for any of your problems, you really can't do anything about them, and you're kind of doomed to spend the rest of your life repeating the same things over and over and over again, forever refusing to acknowledge your own responsibility. And the last thing that narcissists do not believe is the truth. Just in general, the truth is something that narcissists cannot acknowledge. They can't acknowledge the truth of their behavior, the truth of the origins of their emotions, the truth of what you really felt, what your intentions actually were, the truth of how unnecessary and senseless their abuse was, the truth of who has really sabotaged their lives. And if you can imagine for a moment what it's like to live your entire life refusing to believe the things that are actually true, you might almost start to feel sorry for them. Almost. But at the least, you might understand that it really is a waste of time to try to communicate with pathological narcissists, because they don't want to communicate. They aren't interested in reality. They're not interested in the truth. And they're certainly not interested in your view of the truth. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.